Cinemajaw is sponsored by Overcast, an independent podcast app that embraces the open world of podcasting instead of locking it down. No exclusives, no premium content, no paywalls. Just a great podcast app for everyone. Get it for free in the App Store. And we thank them for their support. You're listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from our respective homes in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the Movie Guy, and sitting inside the fish tank is... Fill Me In, Phil.
Hello, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
This week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we listen to the voice above as we cover our top 5 favorite narration movies.
Ryan, in the movie of Rye the Movie Guy's life, who would you want to be the narrator?
So,
and wait, I'm busy. I'm just saying, because I know I'd be your first choice. I'm sorry, I can't do it.
I actually had this thought today, compiling this list of our favorite narration movies. Who would I want? And I actually thought, we were asking those movie questions to our Patreons, and I thought that's a great question. If they were making a movie about your life, who would you want narrating the movie?
Yeah. And?
Yeah. It's a somewhat of a spoiler. If I say mine,
you want to save it then?
Yeah,
save it for
I'll
later?
save it because I do have
one.
one in mind. Yeah, I do have one in mind, and it did make my list.
Well, I'll go ahead and spoil mine, just so we're not completely not paying off on that question, because I would want Fish Tank Phil to narrate my lifestyle.
Wow, what an honor!
Absolutely, buddy.
I feel so blessed, and my answer was Mark Maron. I feel like such a jackass.
Oh, man. Well, Phil, you're the best podcaster I know, other than myself.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I feel bad.
I know. It's a subtle jab. That subtle jab at Ryan. But
the trick is, Ryan, is a good podcasters always know off the top of their head who they would want narrating their life film.
Yeah.
Ryan, you're a good podcaster, buddy. I shouldn't be this mean to you a day after your birthday.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, I'll mention mine when we get there, when we do our top 5 favorite narration movies. Should be noted, me and Matt both discussed that we will not have Shawshank Redemption on our list.
That's right. It's been disqualified. We would both agree that it would be the number 1 narration film. Morgan Freeman in general, I kind of stayed away from, because he has also narrated quite a few. And another rule we decided on, no documentaries, because they're kind of all narrated in one way or another.
Yep. It's interesting. And just doing research on this and, having read articles on filmmaking in the past, I mean, a lot of filmmakers look at the narration as a huge crutch, and some don't like to embrace it. But when they do, sometimes they really pull it off. It can be quite effective. And so there's tons that you can pick from. Claiming these are the 5 best, I'm not saying that, but these are my 5 favorite that I wrote down.
Yeah, I'll get on board that caveat as well. But I will say I'm not totally on board with that criticism of the narration. I've been thinking about this a lot leading up to this podcast, how it's so eschewed and frowned upon lately, especially. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad or lazy vehicle for getting a story across. If anything, I think at times, yes, it's always better to show rather than tell, but a good narration can add layers of complexity to the story that we're not getting shown, because we can't feel the inner dialogue of a character.
I agree with that. And I think when they're done well and the people have thought it through what they want to accomplish with the narration, it can push the story forward and to higher heights. But you do see it sometimes, as a way of just being lazy, like, we could have shot this or done this, but instead we'll just have this guy read a few lines of dialogue over it, and it's supposed to just move things along. That's laziness. But I think the ones we're going to be highlighting here, you'll see evidence that the narration actually helps these movies.
I agree.
Besides that, we have more going on, don't we, Phil?
Yes, we're going to be keeping on with our Eddie Murphy month. So we have a new clip and a new fact that we'll start off at the top of the show.
And we have double reviews this week. Speaking of Eddie Murphy, we have Coming to America, as well as the new Tom Holland Russo brothers film, Cherry.
Right. And that's where we're going to start this week is Cherry, because that is the tie-in with the narration. Tom Holland does narrate throughout the movie, so that got us thinking about the narration movies. In addition to that, we're still getting ready. We're on the hype train here for Kong versus Godzilla. Matt, you will take Phil on in Kaiju movie trivia.
Oh, Jesus. Phil's probably going to kick my ass. He's a big Kaiju fan.
Matt, I think you're seriously overestimating me here. I am about to disappoint so many people.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see.
All right,
That's an
Kaiju
interesting
movie
one.
trivia. And then finally, we do have some feedback when we get to the Jawbox segment. We've heard from some Jawheads that we wanted to comment on since we got time to do it because we don't have a guest this week, Matt.
Yeah, let's let it breathe. Let it breathe.
Can let it breathe.
Yeah, get the Jawheads involved.
I agree. I'm excited for a good podcast. How about you, Matt?
Oh, dude, every week.
Let's get this show rolling with an Eddie Murphy fact.
Yes, we're going with second to Coming to America, one of Eddie's more recent. In the film Dolomite Is My Name, most vintage Rudy Ray Moore movie scenes are recreated in their entirety with modern actors. However, there is an exception in the house escape scene, Bitch, Are You For Real? From The Human Tornado in 1976. Only the close-up shots of Moore were replaced. So Eddie Murphy appears to interact with the original supporting cast.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
It's so cool what they can do with technology nowadays.
I agree. I mean, I think the first one that did it so well where everybody was like amazed at the time was Forrest Gump.
Certainly.
All of a sudden, Forrest Gump was shaking hands with the president, and we were like, whoa, they can do anything. And now it's seamless to the point that I saw Dolomite, and I didn't even realize the fact that
he was interacting with the original cast.
Yeah, had no idea.
If we're being honest, though, the first one to do it justice was Paula Abdul dancing with Fred Astaire in the Super Bowl commercial for Pepsi.
Still wrong. It's Kung Pao Enter the Fist.
No. This Paula Abdul video way predates that.
Throw it in the fish tank.
No, it does.
Oh, it's an 80s commercial, man. Maybe early 90s.
And what's it a commercial for? Pepsi?
Pepsi, I think.
Can we throw that in the fish tank?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Interesting.
Yeah. Anytime there's a question about Paula Abdul in the fish tank.
It's got to go in the fish tank. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving along then, Matt. Cherry, the new film from the Russo brothers and starring Tom Holland, is streaming on Apple TV. How ironic. Those who have seen the trailer or ads for the film see it tackles a lot. Bank robberies, war, drugs, love, and friendship. Can the Russo brothers mix it all together and give us an epic? Matt and I sat down to check it out.
Hey, I'm really happy you're here.
Why is that?
Because I like you. But there never seems to be enough time to do. You're it for me.
I feel the same way.
I joined the army.
Why would you do that?
Sometimes I feel like I've already seen everything that's gonna happen. And it's a nightmare.
Cherry opens with Tom Holland giving us narration while his character enters a bank to rob it. He states this is not his first robbery, and people are already starting to recognize his face. The film then jumps back in time. Nico Walker, played by Tom Holland, is falling in love with Emily, but he seems to have no direction in his life, and he ends up joining the army. The film seems to jump genres and focus at this point. It becomes a full-blown army/war movie for about 45 to 50 minutes. While in Iraq, Nico sees some horrific things happen, one of which is seeing his fellow soldier and friends die in a massive explosion. Nico is never the same. He returns home, has a very bad case of PTSD, and this leads him into opioids. He gets addicted quickly, as does his girlfriend, Emily. The depiction of the drug use is not a pretty one. It is not glammed up for the camera. It was revolting in some scenes. I even looked away at one point. To keep getting drugs, they need to get money, and this finally leads us back to the bank robberies we saw when the film opened. Now, to be honest, it was so long and the story took so many turns that I had forgot that bank robberies were coming. We spend a lot of time with Holland on screen. The story takes place over many years, and I think the shocking thing is that I never felt an attachment to his character. The Russo brothers opted for style over substance, and as a result, I did not have empathy for Nico Walker. The film has a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes. For me, not to care about what happens to the main character at the end is a failure on the filmmakers. As for Tom Holland, impressive performance, but a little shocking to see him in such an adult role and mixed up with drugs. Now, Owen Gleiberman of Variety, I saw his review after viewing this movie, and he said, "There's hardly a moment in Cherry that's believable, but the film's true crime is that there's hardly a moment in it that's enjoyable either. The only emotion the movie conveys is being full of itself." Matt, did you feel any attachment to these characters at all?
No, I didn't feel a deep attachment to these characters. One thing, we did review this on YouTube, and everyone should check this out. One thing I said in that review is the movie at least made me want to read the book. And I'm glad it did, because I did a little research and I found out that Nico Walker is a real person. This is based on a true story. I did not know that going in. That actually knocks it up a notch for me, but not a big notch, because I agree with you, Ryan, 100%. They just didn't do, over this 2.5 nearly hour runtime, they just did not do enough to develop the characters to a point where I felt true empathy. Another thing that was a big misstep, well, let me rephrase. Another thing that I think was out of whack a little bit was the balance of comedy and tragedy. There's some really genuinely humorous moments in here, but this is not The Big Lebowski, right? It's Full Metal Jacket meets Requiem for a Dream with a little bit of humor peppered throughout, and it doesn't live up to either one of those aspirations, if you will. If they had chopped this up, we said maybe do it as a series or maybe even 2 movies, I think it could have been a whole hell of a lot better. But they missed the boat. They just missed the boat.
Yeah, I mean, it's broken into like 5 parts where you get title cards throughout the movie, and they go with this red color on the screen. And it didn't really do anything for me, but it looks good at times, the movie. I mean, again, when we jumped into Iraq, I had no idea we were going to be into like a war movie. I thought they were just going to sort of sum up that he had went to the army, maybe 5 minutes of time of like how he went to the army and he came back, title card 3 years later or something like that. I had no idea that we were literally going to be with him in basic training and then over to Iraq and in, a wartime situation. And
it's like Forrest Gump if Forrest Gump was a bank robbing junkie.
Yeah, but even Forrest Gump only stayed when he goes to Vietnam, short periods of time because he does so much different things. But here, Nico Walker's in Iraq. It feels like for maybe like 40 minutes of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's an extended scene. I mean, it's very formative, obviously, as to what happened later in his life.
It is, yeah.
So, and I didn't feel like any of the violence which was extreme. I never felt that any of that was gratuitous. That's one of the things I think was done extremely well here. There is some violence, obviously, in war. And then there's some violence later with the drugs. And there's even some self-violence in a very shocking scene outside of a hospital involving a syringe and his knee that actually had me cringe. And that's a tall order because I've seen some movies. But man, I had to look away. Agree with you also. Tom Holland, in particular, for this role, took me a minute to catch up with. You know what I mean? Because we're just so used to seeing him as this like very wholesome Peter Parker character. And here he is, just like comes right out of the gate with a gun, swearing and looking for his next fix. And it was a little shocking. And that I liked. That aspect I like. I think it was well cast. I think it was well directed. And obviously the material, the source material is well written. but something just didn't connect. It didn't add up. And I think it's characterization. They just didn't do a good enough job with arcing the characters and developing empathy.
You had mentioned that you had to look away when he was stabbing his knee. And I agree. Brutal scene. There's also one depiction of him taking drugs and a heroin needle, and he basically wakes up at the needle still in his arm, and it's just very gross looking. So I looked away at that point. So take that, Jawhead's grain of salt here. You might know going in, there's some gruesome depictions of drugs.
There are. And again, like I said, I think that because they didn't paint it as glamorous or like romantic, it was just gross. That I want to tip my hat to because I think it was done well.
So another problem I had with it was that Tom Holland, he just, in addition to only being 24 years old, he looks extremely young. His face is just a boy face. And this movie is supposed to go for about almost 30 years. And Matt and I joked when we made the YouTube video about how they slapped that mustache on him at the end. And we're supposed to believe that Tom Holland's in his 40s. It just doesn't work. It's
I thought he was going to rob another bank.
Yeah, I thought, well, look at Spider-Man. He put on a funny mustache. What's going on here? You know?
Oh, dude, yeah. It was a bad job. I mean, we were commenting earlier on another film about how great special effects have become. And this ain't it. This ain't it. Like all the aging technology and everything else, it just looked like a bad Photoshop job at the end, like a $2 costume store mustache.
Agree. You got a movie poster quote for us here?
I do. And I'm a little harsh in this quote, but it just kind of like set itself up for it. And it's just the pits.
Wow.
Yeah.
The pits.
It's a little harsh.
I like really big, bold letters for this movie poster quote. And it just says, "See Spider-Man do drugs."
It's kind of fair, actually.
I think that would sell, you know?
Yeah. Mine wouldn't sell the movie. That's for sure.
No. See Spider-Man do drugs always sells. So
It does.
Yep. Even if you're selling lemonade, put that out there. You'll get customers. How many Jaws here, Matt K?
I'm giving this movie 2 Jaws, and I think that's exactly where it belongs. It's completely like 50-50 movie.
I'm a little harder on it. I'm 1.5 Jaws. And I got to be honest, I hate it. I hate investing that much time for it to be like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And for me to really not care about the characters at the end. It was like really a bummer. Like, I really don't care what happens to this guy here. It just felt like a failure at that point. If I'm feeling that way after 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. I think it could have been a little better if they had embraced more of the dark comedy and tried to throw some redemption in. That may have developed some more empathy, but I can't argue too much with your 1.5.
Did you laugh? There was a scene in there involving Jack Rayner, who is the boyfriend from Midsommar. He joins their little robbery outfit there, and there's a scene where he goes into the bank and he's high as a kite.
Yeah,
and he leaves. I mean, dark humor, or did you laugh? I didn't know.
I loved his character in general.
I was confused. He had a great name too, didn't he?
Pills and Coke. Yeah. Did I laugh? Yeah. Funny. He was just funny in the movie. Like even after he gets injured, and it's pretty serious. I thought that his reaction to all of that was kind of funny. I liked his character. He was one of the more upbeat and comedic characters in the film.
Yeah, I think they could have played that up a little bit more.
Probably.
Right. All right. So for Cheery, it is streaming now exclusively on Apple TV. Matt gives it 2 Jaws. I give it 1.5 Jaws. If you see it and agree, disagree, want to comment on the movie, shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw, or you can always write us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. What about Tom Holland's narration? Did you like it?
No, so we were commenting in the setup here that there's sometimes when narration is lazy, and this is an autobiography, and yes, you do want to hear some of the characters' inner dialogue, but this is an example when I think they could have shown more than they told. So even though I like his voice, I don't think it was totally necessary in a lot of scenes. What did you think of it?
I agree. I didn't think it was completely necessary, and I think the Russo brothers thought they were being like more clever than they actually were. It's one of those that it breaks the fourth wall a couple of times. Tom Holland actually like looks at the camera, but they don't do it enough where that's what I would say is part of the movie. It's like something that they just sort of messed with a little bit. Either dive in and fully embrace that, but don't do it like one or two, three times. It doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that did get us talking about our favorite narration films. You want to start this week, Matt?
I'll kick it off. Sure. All right. So at number 5, I mean, listen, when we're talking narration, this is a subject near and dear to anybody who talks into a microphone once a week for 10 years. Heart. So these are some interesting picks. At number 5, I'm going with Mickey Rourke's narration from the film Sin City as the character Marv. When he talks about Goldie, and he's kind of talking to her like, I'm not going to make it quick and painless like yours was, Goldie. And when he goes to hell after I kill him, it'll seem like heaven after what I'd done to him. And like, just like all the things he talks about when he's bringing razor wire and this and that and my mitts, like he's just got this cool, deep baritone of a voice, and he sounds just as badass as the character Marv is on the screen. It was a fun narration.
You brought this movie up a few weeks back, and I commented then. I'm going to comment it here again. I need to see it again. I've only seen Sin City one time in the theater, and need to rewatch it because when you recount these, I'm like, yes, I got to see the film again. He has a great voice for a narration.
He does. And Clive Owen narrates his parts of the film because if you remember, it's sort of episodal. And I don't think Clive Owens is nearly as good of a narrator as Mickey Rourke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mickey Rourke, it's more like, oh, you got to listen to this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Or else you're going to get beat up.
You better listen to Marv. That's for sure.
So my number 5 pick is the answer to the question at the top of the podcast. You had asked me who I would want narrating my autobiography film.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
So at number 5, I talked about this movie when we did, I don't know what episode it was. Can you throw this in the fish tank? I wonder how long ago this was. We did our favorite movie openings, like favorite beginnings of a movie.
Okay.
And this film landed very high on the list. And a lot of that has to do because of this man's narration. The answer to your question and my number 5 pick is Alec Baldwin.
Oh,
and
that's a good one.
He did the narration for the masterpiece that is the Royal Tenenbaums, circa 2002. And it really comes down to that opening scene when Hey Jude is playing by the Beatles and Alec Baldwin is doing the narration over explaining who the Tenenbaums are, the children, Royal, everybody. And when I go back and I watch it, I just think it's a perfect scene, like literally a perfect way to open the movie. It's hysterical. Baldwin's voice, and he's a New York kind of guy, and that kind of elitist New York, he plays that role so well. It's the perfect voice to be narrating the Royal Tenenbaums. Wes Anderson nailed that casting.
Also a podcaster in his own right, as well as obviously.
Is he still going with that podcast?
Throw it in the fish tank. I believe so. He was just doing the interview celebrities thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember it was sort of like a big thing, and I haven't heard of it for a year at least. I don't know.
Now that you mention it, I haven't heard about it in a long time.
Into our 4s we go.
Rorschach's Journal, October 12th, 1985. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Dire tread on burst stomach. This city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood. And when the drains finally scab over, all the vermin will drown. The accumulated filth of all their sex and murder will foam up around their waists. And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
All right, Ryan, I bet you probably couldn't guess from that clip. But this number 4 is, of course, back-to-back comic book picks. Rorschach, played by Jackie Earle Haley.
Well, listening to that clip, it almost sounded like Jackie Earle Haley doing his best Batman voice.
Well, this predates Batman.
I know it predates it, but doesn't it sound like he's doing a Batman imitation that we all try to do?
No, I think that Christian Bale was trying to do a bad Rorschach impression. But the film is The Watchmen. It's interesting that you make that point, Ryan, because the character Rorschach is based on Batman. He's sort of this detective, and he's relentless, makes no compromises, lives by a strict code. He's like a thinly veiled Batman-esque character. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. I don't know much about The Watchmen. Here's another movie that I've only seen one time in the theater, so I don't remember it as well as you obviously do. I wasn't as high on the film as I know a lot of people were. Another one I should probably have to rewatch.
Yeah, I don't know if it was as well received as it's become beloved over time. You know? So, I don't know. Take from that what you will.
All right. Swings it over to my number 4. And Matt, you've mentioned our YouTube channel, and might as well plug it here again because just recently you animated a cinema war, a very bizarre, funny cinema war where me and Matt were arguing what's better, horse movies or jail movies. Prison movies.
That was a good one.
And it's hilarious. But at the time, this really came up because I was talking a lot about horse movies.
Wait. That's the whole time we've been doing Cinemajaw. You've always talked about horse movies.
Because I'm a fan of horse movies.
That's such a weird thing.
My number 4 pick is 2003's Seabiscuit. Great film, great horse movie, great film. Nominated for Best Picture that year, didn't win, but it was up there. And the narration here is done by David McCullough, who has a very distinguished voice, and it actually elevates the story of Seabiscuit. It adds prestige to the film and the horse itself, if you will. And my favorite clip, I pulled a clip also here, Matt, and my favorite is when the narrator describes the first time the trainer saw Seabiscuit. Roll this clip.
The first time he saw Seabiscuit, the colt was walking through the fog at 5 in the morning. Smith would say later that the horse looked right through him, as if to say, "What the hell are you looking at? Who do you think you are?" He was a small horse, barely 15 hands. He was hurting too. There was a limp in his walk, a wheezing when he breathed. Smith didn't pay attention to that. He was looking the horse in the eye.
God damn.
I just love when the clip opens and he's like, the first time he saw Seabiscuit. Right away, you know, it's a very dramatic moment that the trainer sees the horse. That's going to be very special, you know?
I just can't get over the name of the horse as the name of the movie, Seabiscuit. I mean,
it's beautiful.
Would you like it as much if the horse's name was Ocean Cookie?
Yeah, that would be cool too. I mean, if it's a horse movie, I'm in. You know what I mean?
It doesn't take much for you.
I don't know if you've seen Seabiscuit.
I have. I saw it once. It was at Movies in the Park, as a matter of fact, right outside of my window, just about 100 yards from where I'm sitting. Luckily enough, I lived that close to a park, and I saw Seabiscuit. So I don't know if that was the best venue to see it in. Lots of distractions. So maybe I need to sit down and give it another watch.
It's a real heartwarming. It's one of those, you know, you're going to be cheering, you know, for the underdog sports movie. It's got almost all of it going for it, that I don't see anybody watching the movie and thinking, that was just no good.
Well, I'll
turns everybody into a softie. Seabiscuit.
Ocean Cookie. All right. At number 3, I have Jack's number 3 pick of the evening, Fight Club. The narration done by Edward Norton. Now, here's the thing. We said earlier that it's got to add a layer. And of course, everybody's seen Fight Club by now, knows that Edward Norton's character and Brad Pitt's character are the same person. So the narration takes on a whole new meaning when you watch the movie again, knowing that information. And the way he also wrote Chuck Palahniuk wrote the book with these like little phrases like "I am Jack's everlasting despair," "I am Jack's this," "I am Jack's fill in the blank." It was just kind of a weird way to talk, and a weird, like, they never really explained where that comes from. And I guess you just find out that he's a little insane by the end of the movie. It's a good one.
It is. That's a great use of narration. Fight Club,
for sure.
Honorable mention for me. But it's great because my number 3 pick is also one where it really uses the narration probably more clever and more on the nose than any film maybe ever, and definitely prior to. Unique film, shot here in Chicago, 2006, Stranger Than Fiction.
Good pick.
And the narration is actually the main plot point in the film. For those who have not seen Stranger Than Fiction, this is Will Ferrell. I watched the trailer again while doing the notes here. Will Ferrell looks so young in this movie. It's shocking. Made me sad. But Will Ferrell plays an IRS agent who one day starts to hear a female voice in his head.
Is it Tilda Swinton?
No.
Oh, okay.
The voice is Emma Thompson, and he's starting to go crazy, right? So he's hearing the voice as he's brushing his teeth, and the narrator is starting to say like what he's thinking about while he's brushing his teeth, and he actually starts talking back to the narrator, saying, "I can hear you." And at one point, he's waiting for a bus, and she has finally decided to kill this character, and she mentions that, you know, he's only got days to live, and he's like, "Why?" He's yelling up to the sky. It's hilarious. And then the whole point of the movie is that Will Ferrell is on this journey to go see and find out who this narrator is, and not to kill him off. And it's populated with other great actors such as Dustin Hoffman, Maggie Gyllenhaal, as I mentioned, Emma Thompson, Will Ferrell. It is great and a very clever movie. If you haven't seen Stranger Than Fiction, well worth your time to check that one out.
That is a good one, man. Good pick. I like Stranger Than Fiction quite a bit. And it's a good example of, in fact, maybe the only example I can think of off the top of my head where narration like firmly takes a front and center role as part of the plot.
Right. I mean, we were just talking who we would want narrating a movie about our lives. I mean, what if the narrator just started talking in your head?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
All right. You're going to give me crap for this next one because it's a pick probably that comes up a little too often, but I feel like it deserves its place on this list. It's A Christmas Story. I can't remember off the top of my head who the narrator is, but of course he's narrating Ralphie's, life, his Christmas with his parents. Now, the thing that I think makes this an important piece of narration is that kids can't express out loud the things that they're thinking in the moment because it's inappropriate for children to say, to express what they're really thinking, or they just don't have the emotional wherewithal yet to get it out. So putting the narrator in the story fills in the blanks and makes it so much richer and funnier. And do they use it in lazy ways here and there? Yes. But can you imagine A Christmas Story without the narration? It would be boring as hell.
Needs it for sure.
Yeah, it really needs it. And it's a heartwarming movie. We watch it every year. Plays on Christmas 24/7.
My number 2 pick is a film that has a dual role by Nicolas Cage. And actually
sold.
Actually, basically a third because he's the narrator in this film as well. Of course, I'm speaking of the 2003 film Adaptation.
Nice. Yeah,
and in here, Nick Cage plays Charlie Kaufman, and Charlie Kaufman wrote the movie. So he's playing Charlie Kaufman and his brother, his fictitious brother, Donald Kaufman. And it's Charlie Kaufman who's the character anyways, is narrating the film. And you hear it probably the most and laugh the most when he is out on having dinner with Tilda Swinton. And he is so worried that she's looking at his hairline. He's sweating too much. She knows that he's balding. And all of the thoughts that are going on in this character of Charlie Kaufman's head is being rapid fire of what's going on in his head is being told to us through the narration. It's hilarious all the way throughout. And of course, Donald Kaufman is got all the confidence in the world, and he's writing this other screenplay in which, horse versus car. He makes this one analogy. It's machine versus horse. It's hilarious. And Charlie Kaufman can't even fathom that this guy is making movies such as he is also making movies. How can these two both exist in the same world,
Yeah.
Great one. And another humongous cast in there. I mentioned Tilda Swinton, and she just has a small role, but Meryl Streep's in there, Chris Cooper, Nicolas Cage ×2. Fantastic.
Top tier Nicolas Cage, would you say?
Oh, yes. Yeah, hands down. This
right.
is, you can almost make an argument. Well, I know you love Mandy, but Mandy, not to say it wasn't a bad performance by Cage, but I would say this adaptation was one of the last great Nicolas Cage performances.
It's tough to argue with. One of the great, let's say, traditional performances by
Right.
Nicolas Cage.
Before he became sort of the foolish Nick Cage, where he's just like,
a B-movie.
Even Mandy, he's playing off the persona of it's Nick Cage in this kind of movie, Adaptation, he was still more or less, okay, this is a normal actor playing two roles. It didn't have that persona of it's a Nick Cage movie.
Do you think Nicolas Cage will ever get that respect back?
I don't know. I mean, the guy's pumping out something like 7 movies a year. So many of them are direct to DVD. Nobody even knows what's going on. It's like, what is this? You'd be stunned because we don't even cover him that much here on Jaw, but
Yeah.
he's doing a ton of movies.
All right. This is Cinemajaw's number 1 picks for narration in film. And I got to go with Alex and his droogs in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange.
Wow. I didn't see this pick coming. This is your favorite, huh?
Oh yeah. And here's the thing, the novel, and I'm going to admit that I've never read this book cover to cover because it is really tough to get through the slang. There's a glossary in the back just to explain the slang. And that's part of the pleasure of the book is the language that he almost creates, right? And Alex, when he is explaining this world to us, uses that slang, but because we're also seeing the pictures, we can follow it much more closely and kind of, gather what he's talking about. And, Malcolm McDowell's voice, the young Malcolm McDowell's voice when he's talking about a bit of the old ultra-violence and, Ludwig van and all the cool expressions he has, it just adds layers to this psychopath sadist of a character that is, made it such a great movie and so sticky in our heads. Without the narration, I think this movie would be dull.
It's a good one right there. I'm going to match you with my number 1. It's a classic here as well. I was actually worried that we were going to cross over and have the same number 1. Mine came out in 1990. Martin Scorsese, Goodfellas.
Yeah, I avoided it because I talk about it a lot. But
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, when you're talking narration, I mean, that's what the star of the movie is Ray Liotta's narration of the film. It's just incredible. And it's right away when you think Goodfellas, you actually think of this line, and it's done in narration. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Closes the trunk. And that's how the movie starts. And the whole film is just start to finish Ray Liotta narrating exactly the gangster life, the Goodfella life, who people are, pass the papers. All of the moments when he's introducing the characters to the lifestyle, to the way the organization of these criminals ran. The whole thing is narrated. And you could almost look at that and say, well, geez, it sounds rather lazy, but it just worked. Completely worked. It's the reason why Goodfellas is as good as it is.
It even at the ending where he's like, I ordered I ordered spaghetti and meatballs and I got egg noodles and ketchup. Like the whole thing. There's so many great lines just in the narration.
It is. Had to be my number 1. Honorable mentions for you, Matt?
Ooh, I got a bunch, dude.
I got a few.
All right, here we go. I'll just go rapid fire. We'll see how many of yours I can shoot down. $1 Million Baby. I said no Morgan Freeman, but I cheated. Memento. Also, one that I thought about putting on the list because it plays a central role. American Psycho, great narration. Raising Arizona, speaking of Nick Cage. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, a very fourth wall breaky kind of movie. SLC Punk, which I think you need to see still. And Stand By Me, all great narrative movies.
Nice. You knocked one off my list, which was American Psycho. I agree. Fantastic. Usual Suspects.
Oh, yeah, good one.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Robert Downey Jr., Val Kilmer. Love that one. And then the last one that I had on the list, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. The narration done there is by Hugh Ross. And very important that the narration tells the story of the assassination of Jesse James. I love that movie. Love the narration in it.
I got to see that movie still, Ryan. That's
a good one, but it's a long one. That's a 3-hour plus time commitment.
I would expect nothing less than a movie with that title, you know?
I know. I love it. All right. If we missed your favorite narration in movies, and there are a lot, so there's a good chance we did, shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw or an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we have feedback. We have our take on Coming to America 2 and Kaiju movie trivia. Stick with us.
The first thing that I think about when I hear the name Eddie Murphy is, of course, Mushu. Growing up, Mulan was my real first memory of Eddie, and whether or not it's fair, Mushu is kind of the standard that I still to this day hold Eddie Murphy to. In the film, just like Robin Williams did with Genie, Eddie brings so much of his own personality and his own flavor into this role. Mushu, as a character, really doesn't fit into this movie. Eddie Murphy might possibly be the least Chinese thing ever, but in a role where a lesser actor would break the immersion and make us all wonder, why the hell does this ancient ancestral Chinese guardian sound like my neighbor in modern times? Eddie's bombast really, really sells it. And he sells it right from the get-go, too, with his epic, if not slightly embarrassing, introduction.
It's going to take a miracle to get me into the army.
Did I hear someone ask for America? Let me hear you say, ow! Ah! That's close enough.
A ghost.
Get ready, Milan. Your 17 salvation is at hand. For I have been sent by your ancestors to guide you through your masquerade. Come on, if you're going to stay, you're going to work. So heed my word. Goes if the army finds out you're a girl. The penalty is death.
Who are you?
Who am I? Who am I? I am the guardian of lost souls. I am the powerful, the pleasurable, the indestructible Mushu. Oh, pretty high, huh?
Jawheads, I want you to do me a favor. Pull your phone out of your pocket and go to your YouTube app. Search for the Cinemajaw channel and hit subscribe. Really, please do it right now. This will do two things. One, it helps us reach more people. We want to spread the good word about film, and you clicking subscribe really helps us do that. And two, it costs you nothing. That's right. Subscribing to Cinemajaw on YouTube is fun and it's free. Think of it as a donation that doesn't even cost you anything. Even if you just listen to the podcast and never really watch the videos, you subscribing on YouTube helps us make the podcast better too. But please check out a few videos while you're there. We think they're pretty good. So right now, while you're listening, before you forget, take your phone out. It shouldn't even interrupt the show. And go to YouTube, search Cinemajaw, and hit subscribe. And thank you so much.
And we are back on Cinemajaw. Matt, before we get to Coming to America and before we play that Kaiju movie trivia, we threw a few items into that fish tank. Let's open up that fish tank and let Phil out.
Wait a moment. It's fish, isn't it?
DC! Wake up! Wake up! No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, get some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
We
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Thank you guys so much. It's great to have some fresh air. It's always great to be out here, always great to be podcasting with you guys. Before I get into the questions, I did want to take this opportunity to talk about something we talked about off screen, or off mic rather, because it is, in my opinion, a glaring omission from the top 5 list. Matt and Ryan did not once, even in their honorable mentions, bring up Cate Blanchett as Galadriel in The Fellowship of the Ring for top 5 narrations.
A glaring oversight.
For sure. I mean, no matter what, definitely an honorable mention. You're right. And talk about a way to open up this epic 3-part series. Comes on with her talking about the rings and the different, groups, the elves. I love it.
So, and it's one of those things where it's like kind of necessary, I think, right? How else would they bring in that what do you call it, a preface to the book series on screen? It would be a nightmare.
I will say in our defense, though, it's not like a narration throughout. It's just that opening. But that is so strong. It's a very strong opening.
Yeah.
That's what I thought when Ryan was talking about Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Talking about these great openings. I was like, oh, buckle up. But I was only disappointed. Well, not disappointed, but it went a different direction than I thought. And that brings us into our questions. And I'm going to level with everybody here. Sometimes when we're talking and we throw out questions, if they happen too fast, I don't always know exactly what the question is. So this one just has Paula Abdul Pepsi commercial. What I was looking up about it, I don't know, but I found out a lot of good stuff.
We were just looking for the year mostly, but
okay, I got that. First and foremost, I will say the commercial you're talking about came out in 1992, but it was a Diet Coke commercial. I don't know how she got around. She did do a lot of Pepsi commercials. She did many for both brands, and I don't understand how they didn't have like non-compete agreements that she signed. But good for Paula, because I'm sure she made a lot of money.
Yeah, those soft drink deals are lucrative.
I just love that I asked Matt, what was it a commercial for? And he was just Pepsi, right on it. Pepsi, he knew.
Oh, come on. I mean, I was close.
She did a lot. She did, truly.
Don Draper would be pissed.
The woman has like 5 Pepsi and 10 Diet Coke. So to mix them up, I really can't blame him. I also want to point out, okay, because there's a Paula Abdul commercial out that came out this year that harkens back to that exact commercial where she is doing like a green screen or whatever you want to call it with an older version of herself. It's like for maybe I should have looked this up. It's for like some old people medication, and she's saying my joints are still good. She kills in it is the point. She's old, but she kills it. Paula looks great, dances great.
She's amazing, and nothing against Paula. Yeah.
It's not until I remember Paula Abdul that I realize how terrific she is. Then, this one, when did we do our favorite movie openings? Inspired, of course, by the Alec Baldwin comment. This is a very, very, very old episode. This was done Cinemajaw episode 40. 2 digits.
Jeez.
Holy cow.
This is 5:07 now for everyone who may be driving and can't look at their phone.
Yeah.
Was that like 2010?
August 24th, 2010. Wow. A few months over a decade.
That is insane to think about. But it must have been good because it's stuck in my head that I had Royal Tenenbaums listed in my top 5 favorite movie openings.
What I will say, the movie may have been good, but the episode, you can still find it if you're tricky. But if you just go to cinemajaw.com, you will have to do more sleuth work. Mm-hmm. Send us a DM and I'll help you get there if you're really that interested. But it's one it's old. And then our last one is Alec Baldwin still podcasting, and you better believe he is. The thing, or here's the thing with Alec Baldwin is still going on, and as of this recording, his last episode was March 8th with Sam Wasson.
Oh, yeah. I mean, why would you
still
stop?
killing it,
right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I guess it was because it was so notable at first. It was being talked about, and I remember I listened to a few, and I was like, "Oh man, this is big!" And now it's off my radar.
Yeah, he was one of the first non-broadcasting celebrities to dip their toe into podcasting. Among the first. I'm not saying he was the very first, but he was the first wave, and then everybody sort of got in on it.
Correct. We also got some feedback, Phil.
Yeah, we do. Okay, here's a great one. Because it was actually a little over a month ago on our last solo episode, actually, we had featured Darren Mordecai as a guest of honor, a Patreon of honor. And we did like a little Q&A with him, got to know him. And for jawheads who remember back to that episode, we had asked him his favorite movie snack, which, to quote, was Chop Top ice cream, eat chocolate, dip into popcorn, salty dairy delight.
And we were confused.
No clue.
Yeah.
But one of the great things about our fan base, Darren in particular, is that he answered us back. So we have a thrilling conclusion to what has been like a month and a half of waiting.
Thrilling conclusion. I love the way you're
I'm
selling
on
it,
the
Phil.
edge of my seat.
This
Let me get
I
some
cannot
chocolate
express how
and
happy
popcorn
this made me.
And hear this. All right.
To hear back from him is truly a treat, sweeter than anything he was eating. Darren wrote us, update on the ice cream popcorn answer. Chop Top ice cream is just biting some chocolate and then dipping it into popcorn. Although I like the idea of ice cream with fudge sauce and popcorn sprinkles. So there you go. It's kind of like the ice cream nachos, if you will.
We were making it much more complicated than it is. It's really just eat some chocolate, then follow it up with some popcorn kind of deal.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things that I love about Darren is that without fail, he always finds a way to make us look like idiots.
Mm-hmm.
He also writes, Matt, I also love Chappie. Maybe we are lost brothers, which...
It's me and you, Darren. Me and you are probably the only two. I love Chappie.
No, the two people in D. Antwoord are also fans, but I hope that neither of you are related to them. We got more. There's actually a lot of feedback. This one was from Twitter. Another frequent flyer of our feedback section, Alex Zahersky. They wrote in regarding episode number 504, where we were talking about simulation movies. Their tweet says, I don't think you said one of my absolute favorite simulation movies, which is one I'm sure Phil appreciates as well since it's animated. Paprika, Satoshi Kon's best work. And I do agree. I apologize for taking pause. My family always called it Paprika, so I have to remember it's not the name of the movie. But yeah, Satoshi Kon's brilliant. I was also talking about, with the Bill Leff episode with Best Animated Films, Perfect Blue is another terrific film by him. And I will take every chance I can to plug GD Hoopla. Both of those films, Paprika and Perfect Blue, are on Hoopla. It's free. It's great.
Well, when we get a comment like that, I went ahead and I researched this. I have not seen this Paprika, so I wrote it down in the journal. I will be watching this. It looks amazing. It
Visual
really does.
Masterpiece. Yeah,
wow.
Really, like the color palette is terrific. I think it probably is Satoshi Kon's best work. My favorite is Millennium Actress, but if you haven't seen anything by this guy, he's nuts. He's nuts. He's so talented.
And
dude,
the story is about like a psychologist that can get into people's dreams. So even the idea of it sounds really interesting. I'm totally in on this. I'm glad you brought it up.
There was a SpongeBob episode just like that.
What?
There was a SpongeBob.
Oh,
Phil,
you're
come
right.
on.
Yes, yes.
You're
right.
Dreams.
Yeah. I forgot it, but you're right. The one where Gary is a poet. We also, this is our last one that we have, but we do have even more feedback. We really dropped the ball on simulation movies. Dan O'Neill wrote in saying, was hoping you might bring up Cronenberg's Existence from 1999, a bizarre ride, but worth,
that's one like Paprika that is actually pronounced incorrectly. It's called
Is it
Existence? Yes.
Okay, in my defense, okay, and I say this, my name is spelled Pfil because my parents hate me. This is another, it's E capital X, ISTEN capital Z.
Very 90s.
Dan writes, it's a bizarre ride, but a worthwhile watch.
So I have not seen this. Have you, Matt?
I have seen Existence. It's been a long time. I think I haven't seen it since the 90s.
Again, this is another one I wrote down in the journal after doing a little research, seeing it's Cronenberg. Saw this tweet. I thought, I'll check this one out. Currently streaming on Paramount Plus, that new service.
There's a Paramount Plus now?
Yep.
Jesus.
And I don't have it, so I don't know when I'm going to see it. But
is it free? Is it a free one, or is it one we got to pay for?
Pay.
Oh, Jesus.
The only thing that I wonder about this, and maybe this is a conversation for another podcast too, but I swear to God, isn't this an erectile dysfunction medication? Like the way it's spelled.
Well, I wouldn't know.
I'm 99% sure. I believe if you guys remember the commercials with Smiling Bob.
I know what you're talking about.
Mid-aughts, I think that was for this.
No, that was Extends.
Mm.
And it was not necessarily an erectile dysfunction medication. It was one of those pills that is supposed to help the endowment, if you will.
Wow.
Which, by the way, everybody, those are all scams.
Yeah, Phil took us way left turn here. I don't know where
That's
we're at.
That's Dan's fault, too, or the movie's fault.
All right, was that everything?
Blame poor Dan on that.
Why? I'm in an arena where he has no ability to defend himself. That's where I thrive. That was everything we got.
Speaking of people like Dan and Darren, I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of our amazing Patreons. Seriously, guys, we really, really appreciate the support of the show that you bring. And if anybody listening wants to join our Patreon at Cinemajaw, it's patreon.com/Cinemajaw. We just dropped speaking of Eddie Murphy month, review of Bowfinger, a movie with Eddie Murphy in a dual role, starring also Steve Martin, directed by Frank Oz. So you can hear us talk about that. We did some bad superhero movie reviews, and we're always dropping new stuff. It's a good time. Come on over there, interact with us, and help support the show. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. We were very split on the Bowfinger. So if you like to hear me and Matt have two completely different opinions on a movie, it happened with Bowfinger, and our Patreons will hear it.
Yeah, that's a good selling point, actually. Do check that out, because we argue.
All right. I think that's everything in the fish tank. Let's close it up.
You betcha.
Ryan, Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, and most of the original cast is back again for a sequel to arguably one of the greatest comedy hits of a generation, Coming to America. But has 33 years in between made this project doomed? Should Coming to America be fed to the lions, or is this an elephant-sized hit? Ryan and I flew to Zamunda to find out.
I've just discovered that I may have a son here in this land.
How much child support is she getting from
The king pays no child support.
No child support for 30 years and you came back? You was a dummy.
Hello, I am Hakim Jaffer, king of Zamunda. You are the heir to the throne.
Yes, my son.
He's supposed to be like the prince of Wakanda.
Wakanda is a fictional place.
Not to everybody.
Zamunda is a very real nation.
I don't need no handout. Wait a minute. All right, I'm gonna pack. Okay, baby.
Here's what you need to know, guys. In the fictional land of Zamunda, 30 years have passed since the Crown Prince Akeem, Eddie Murphy, of course, and his pal and aide Simi, Arsenio Hall, traveled to Queens to find Lisa McDowell, played by Sherry Headley, a woman who would arouse his intellect as well as his loins. Akeem is about to become king, and having 3 daughters leaves him with no heir to the throne of Zamunda. More on this in a second, which leaves his country open to an attack from its more warrior-like neighbors from Nextoria. Yeah, Nextoria. It's about then that the royal shaman Baba, also played by Arsenio Hall, informs the new king that he does indeed have a bastard son in Queens from a one-night stand with a character played by Leslie Jones, Mary Johnson. So, of course, Eddie and crew travel back to America to retrieve the illegitimate son to be the heir to the throne and save Zamunda from war. Okay, where do I even start here? This movie is a total mess, and it's a goddamn shame. The original Coming to America is an absolute treasure, and this 30 years late sequel merely cashes in on its memory. Akeem's son, Lavelle, is at first quite eager to please, go through with this arranged marriage, but like father, like son, he also finds true love more interesting than an arrangement. I can, appreciate that. I think the main problem here is just balance. If Eddie is going to be the star, then let Eddie be the star. If it's a passing of the torch, then let Jermaine Fowler, Lavelle, be the star. Lavelle's puddle-deep romance, another problem, was so rushed that I was honestly confused for a moment that he was falling in love with his half-sister, as the romance scene immediately follows an awkward sibling bonding scene. I said I'd get back to the three-daughter thing. Early on, the movie sets up this moral in the making, introducing us to three strong daughters, including Mika, played by Kiki Lane, who clearly wants to rule when her time comes. You'd think this layup would be properly executed and a girl power message might come through. Nope. Although there is lip service paid up in the final moments, if anything, the treatment and depiction of women in this film is even worse than the original made in 1988. There are a few positives. There are some wonderful comedic cameos throughout. Nearly everyone still alive who had a role in the original is back in one way or another. Wesley Snipes, in particular, is fantastic as the flamboyant General Izzy. One of the real standouts, believe it or not, is actually Arsenio Hall. His Baba character reminded me just how talented this guy was and still is. However, the new cast members were typically the best parts. Tracy Morgan, Leslie Jones, and the daughters of the king were all great. Also, there's a lot of musical and dance numbers that are expertly choreographed, and they just sound amazing. At the end, however, the bad outweighs the good. This is an Adam Sandler-style production. Let's get all of our friends on a paid holiday and cash in on a beloved memory. Skip this one altogether.
Wow. A skip, huh?
Yeah, I almost just wish it didn't exist. I really struggled to find some redeeming qualities here. I wanted to like this movie, and I just don't.
Well, I'm going to blow your hair back when I say I'm actually recommending Coming to America too. But
you've just lost all credibility, Ryan.
I'll say this much. It's far from great. In my notes here, what I wanted to touch on is a lot what you summed up in your review. They played it way too safe all around, from the script, the filmmakers. They relied on rehashed jokes, bringing back characters that we're all familiar with, and they didn't take enough gambles on the new stuff, the new comedy that could have worked, and the storyline of the girl power that they missed. I agree. They botched. I'm so happy to hear that you were confused that he was falling in love with possibly his half sister. I had the same exact thing. And I was almost embarrassed to say that I was confused for a second, because it does get rushed very quick on who he's falling in love with. So I'm glad that came up. But here's what saves it. You nailed it. Wesley Snipes. Who knew the guy could be that funny? I don't even know the last time I saw Wesley Snipes. And now I see him in this role. I mean, I laughed at least 3 times out loud. So that was a big score for Wesley Snipes in the movie. But the true talents in this movie that push it to slight recommend for me. Leslie Jones, she's the best. And
I agree.
Her entire character, every time she was on screen, was great. And I also like Tracy Morgan as well. I think those two really make it, and throw in the new character that Arsenio plays.
The Baba character.
Yeah, he
the
was
wizard.
hilarious.
He was great. I loved that for sure.
The first time they started talking about the bastard son, and they just kept saying bastard over and over and over, it was funny. I mean, it got me to laugh. You also have some ridiculous, but in a good way, musical numbers here. They even bring out Salt and Pepper at one point, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, but they relied on that. I mean, that's like, too much.
And the costumes, fantastic, very vibrant. And those costumes, I do want to note, are done by Ruth Carter, who she's a legend, but won finally her first Oscar for Black Panther. And I thought the costumes and the musical numbers, it was a big production type of comedy, something we hadn't seen in a little while,
Yeah, it was. You're absolutely right. It was a big production comedy without the comedy.
Well, so there's this scene in there, the one that I wanted to highlight here with Leslie Jones, where they go back in time and they're using this old footage from the original Coming to America. And having just rewatched the first one in preparation for this, seeing the scene again, this is the scene where they go to like a nightclub and they basically were like looking for, his possible bride to be at that time.
I was Joan of Arc in a former life.
So
that scene,
it's great. And in this particular scene, they're able to interweave Leslie Jones's character in the nightclub, and she ends up going back to their apartment. That scene, from the nostalgia feel of seeing the two doing the interviews, somehow getting Leslie Jones in there, and then going back to the apartment, all were really, really, really funny stuff. I mean, so it's a win. If a comedy can get me to laugh that hard, for even if it is only for a couple of minutes, that's why I'm saying I would slightly recommend. I really enjoyed about a 5-minute chunk of this movie.
Oh my God. So you're recommending the whole movie on a 5-minute chunk?
That's what I really recommend. I mean, I really enjoyed 5 minutes of the movie. I laughed at other points, and there's other elements that, like I mentioned, but for 5 minutes, I would say it was like laugh out loud. I couldn't believe how good and funny it was.
Yeah, I mean, in a fist fight, if you land 5 punches out of 100, you still lost the fight, Ryan. This is not a good movie. And I'm sorry, they're just cashing in on our fond memories of a classic movie. Are there a few things that work? Yes. Was Leslie Jones awesome in this? She was. But that does not make it a good movie because she's a small part of this movie. There's large sections of it that are just not funny. Like, They not only rehash jokes, some of them they rehash twice. I mean, they gave us the rapping twins, like, my name's Peaches and I'm the best. All the DJs want to see my breasts. That was funny in 1988. The first time in 2021, I thought it was funny again. The second time they did it, the same lines. I'm like, why are they doing this a second time? And the preacher guy, he comes on twice. I'm like, that's just not necessary. They finished the whole thing off, of course, with Sexual Chocolate and Randy Watson, and it just lost me at that point. And
I liked it.
Really? It didn't work. I mean, the first time we saw Sexual Chocolate was probably one of the best parts of the movie, and this time it just felt like Elvis trying to squeeze back into the suit, man. It just didn't work for me.
Well, who didn't age were the old guys in the barbershop. They looked the same, the same as they did back in 1989.
I want to see those guys get a movie. Seriously, can we get that movie?
Well, I'm not saying it was great by any means, but I think I'm obviously a little bit higher on it than you. What about a movie poster quote?
All right, here's my quote. Eddie Murphy and crew cash in on memory lane in this uninspired rehash.
I went with not very risky, but it does make you smile and laugh.
How many Jaws, Rye?
2.5 Jaws. 2.5 Jaws. Slight recommend for me.
This may be my lowest score, certainly this year, but maybe in the past 2 years. 1 Jaw. Just wish the movie didn't exist.
Unbelievable. 1 Jaw from Matt K. 2.5 from Rye the Movie Guy. It is streaming exclusively on Amazon Prime. If you see it, let us know what you think. Shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw. I can already hear that music playing. The last time we played some movie trivia, Matt, where you took Pfil on, you lost to Pfil.
That doesn't sound right.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
I don't think that's
correct. This is your revenge if you want it. We are playing in honor of Godzilla vs. King Kong Kaiju movie trivia. Phil, we always like to let you choose. Do you want to go first or let Matt K go first?
We always like to let me choose, and I always say it's Frank T. Ziti rules. Always go first.
All right, here we go. Question number 1 over to Phil in Kaiju movie trivia. Name the director of Pacific Rim.
Guillermo. Big G del Toro.
There we go. 1-0 Phil. Can he win back-to-back games against Matt K? Question 2.
They're all like that, yes.
Name the Stranger Things star who appears in Godzilla, King of Monsters.
Oh, yeah. Her name.
And not the 11. Character name.
She's 11. Yeah. She's also Enola Holmes. And, oh, man, I should remember it from Enola Holmes. Oh.
Need an answer here.
Kristen Scott Thomas.
It is a three-parter.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is a three-parter.
Phil, take this one
Millie
away.
Bobby Brown.
Ugh.
Millie Bobby Brown is correct. 2-0, Phil. Question 3 is over to him. Phil, name the blonde actress King Kong falls in love with in the 2005 King Kong film.
It's one of the Naomis. Whichever one I pick, it's going to be wrong, I think. I gotta go Watts. I don't think it is, but that's the one I got on my mind.
That is correct, Phil.
Oh, good.
Well done.
Good.
Naomi
good.
Watts it is.
But is King Kong a kaiju? Didn't we already decide that he wasn't?
No, this was an off the mic conversation we had about Clifford the Big Red Dog and Grape Ape.
Right.
King Kong was always in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 3-0 is the main thing here, Matt. It's 3-0. It's a kaiju lead here. Question 4 is over to you. We barely see the kaiju in this 2008 found footage style movie about a group of New Yorkers partying when it attacks. Name the movie.
This was 2008?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that was Cloverfield.
That is correct. You are on the board. 3-1, Phil. Question 5 is over to him. Phil, Bong Joon-ho, director of Parasite, directed one kaiju movie. It came out in 2006. Name it.
Oh, I got nothing. I can't even think of a name. I have literally nothing.
Matt, you got a chance for a steal and to make it a 3-2 game.
The Host.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that
The Host
clicks.
It is. Yeah. It is 3-2, and question 6 is over to Matt K. You can tie it up right here.
Ooh.
Matt, Anne Hathaway appears in one kaiju film. It came out in 2017.
Yeah. Colossal.
Oh, wow. We got a tie ball game.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
He has come back big time. No pun intended. Question 7 over to Phil. The Rock got involved with kaiju when he starred in this 2018 film based on a video game.
Rampage.
Yes.
Rampage. Okay.
Yes. Phil,
This is really coming to the wire.
4-3, and the last question of the game is over to Matt K. Matt, in 2014's Godzilla, who played Joe Brady, Ford's father and former lead engineer at the nuclear power plant until its destruction in 1999?
Bryan Cranston.
That is correct. We have a tie ball game. Well done, guys. 4-4. The tiebreaker is this.
Oh, man.
Over to Phil. Better film, Kong Skull Island or Godzilla 2014?
2014?
Yeah.
Godzilla.
Would have gave that one to you. Real jawbreaker is this. Age of Bryan Cranston closest to.
Oh, boy.
Matt, you got to guess.
The dad on Malcolm in the Middle was probably in his 40s then and is in his mid to late 50s now. I will say he is 57 years old.
Lock him in at 57. Phil for the win. How old is Bryan Cranston?
I think he's a little older because I think
He might
Matt's
be older.
underestimating when Malcolm in the Middle was.
Yeah, I did. He might have been younger on Malcolm in the Middle, though.
He might have been. He's one of those people who's just, I get the feeling, always looked old. I'm going to say 65.
Phil wins this one. 65 on the nose.
Oh, my God.
Well done, Phil. Back-to-back wins.
Wow. I am impressed with myself. I was worried that there was one of the very, very old films that all blur together, but Mothra never once came up.
Nope.
None of like the Ghidorah never came up.
No.
It's truly a great day.
Kept it modern. Phil's a winner for 2 times against Matt K. Boy, how the tables have turned, Matt.
Fist bump, Phil.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of a very fun jaw. First and foremost, got to thank our editor, our producer, our champion in trivia, Phil.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to work with you guys, and I will use my winnings to quickly plug our either Twitter, Instagram, however you guys want to connect with us. Feel free to throw us feedback at cinemajaw.com. We love hearing from you, and we'll read it, just like we read Darren and Dan and Alex's stuff.
Absolutely. Matt, we also got to thank our sponsors.
Yes, thanks to Overcast and the Chicago Podcast Co-op, who help us get great sponsors like them.
Yep. And another way you can support Cinemajaw is by leaving us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
While you're at it, please click subscribe. One extra button helps us out a lot.
Until next week, I'm Ryan, the movie guy.
I'm Matt Kay.
And keep on jawing about the movies.